Right. Well, first of all, I want to introduce Tony, of course, whom you all know very well. And he's going to be launching, as I say, his book, Triple Tease, this evening. Brain Capron, whom I'm sure you also know, is joining us tonight, as is Tamara, who we met last month. Yes. A much published author. So without any ado, I'll turn it over to Tony. Do you want to?
Yep, fine. But I'd also like to reiterate that welcome to you all, and particularly our special guests, Brain Capron and Tamara McKinley, who kindly, as Alan said, agreed to launch my spicy crime thriller, Triple Tease. In kicking off the book launch, Triple Tease is 80% crime thriller, but there's 20% sexual content. I didn't include sex scenes just to titillate. They are important to the story and the characters in it. In order to capture the true flavour of murder suspects who come into contact with lap dancers and the nightclub scene, or belong to a dating agency, it is necessary to describe some of the things they get up to. To give you a brief insight into the story, I can do no better than to read the review by Brian, known to most of you as the serial killer Richard Hillman in Coronation Street. He wrote, "Tony Flood's compassionate cop at DCI Livermore has to decide whether the ends justify the means as he hunts a serial killer. Super delicious heroine, Katrina, having taken revenge on the pervert who assaulted her sister, challenges Livermore to ignore the rule book and offers to help him nail the killer by acting as the bait in a honey trap. She dates the main suspect, and there's another murder as the plot produces more thrills and spills before a totally unexpected climax." There is, of course, a very sexy picture of Katrina on the front cover. I'm privileged now to have Alan Baker bring to life the first chapter with his great theatrical skills which made him a West End star. Alan, I'll go over to you, my dear friend.
Thanks, Tony. This is the opening chapter of Triple Tease. The expression drop-dead gorgeous was never more apt than in the case of Katrina Merton, because some men would quite literally die for her. She was a stunningly attractive 29-year-old blonde with a dazzling smile, shapely legs and hourglass figure, the nearest thing to a younger, taller Kylie Minogue. Katrina was fully aware of the effect she had on the opposite sex, and couldn't resist smiling when noticing a man watching her intently as she walked across the Westerfield College car park in Eastbourne on a dark October evening. Katrina was heading for a light blue Rover 45 in the right-hand corner of the almost empty parking area. The overweight man strode over just before she got to the Rover. "You a bloody tease!" And a bullet to the heart killed him instantly.
Brian, over to you.
Thank you very much. Yes, well, Tony's asked me to try and compare and contrast his villainous murderer in Triple Tease to my villainous murderer in Coronation Street. And for anybody who doesn't know, he was called Richard Hillman. He was quite a notorious psychopath who tried to kill quite a few people. He was the first serial killer in Coronation Street. He only actually managed to kill about 3 people, but he did try it on with quite a few others. It's quite difficult, this, because I can't give much away about the Triple Tease murderer, so I've got to be quite careful what I say. Generally, these two psychopaths are quite different, but they do have a couple of similarities. If I talk about motivation of the characters, the motivation of Tony's murderer, I'm going to call him Tony's murderer, is basically totally sexual, and I think probably power is a motive as well. And there's another contrast with your character is there was a lot of black humour in the Richard Hillman thing, and I don't think there's any black humour.
No, not much. But there is some humour, but not,
there is some
not
humour.
black humour.
There's some humour, but not black humour associated with your character.
So
anyway, background to these. Triple Tease's murderer has severe personality problems, which stem from his deprived background, but of course the way Tony's written it, it's also a very depraved background. And he was rejected by his mother. So we have this big psychological thing there, and that's quite an interesting contrast to Richard Hillman, because Richard Hillman was obsessed and very connected with his mother, who we talked about at length in Coronation Street. There is a kind of a link in the financial advisor stakes, but it's a kind of indirect link, but I can't say more than that really. Anyway, if you want to know anything more about the murderer that I haven't revealed, and you want to discover the brilliantly clever conceit and concept of the plot Tony has dreamt up, you'll have to read the book, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Brian. That was fantastic. Without further ado, I'll hand you over to Tamara.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I now have the really difficult job of following Brian and Tony. The idea of Triple Tease probably started, like all authors' ideas, as a tiny seed that became implanted in Tony's very fertile imagination. And as the tendrils began to spread and the seed began to flourish, Tony started to nurture it, just as he would a precious offspring. He imbued that seed with a life of its own, carefully guiding it as it took shape and form, sometimes stopping it from going in the wrong direction or even pruning bits of it back so that it didn't go wrong anywhere, a bit like with teenage children. So with trepidation, he finally got to the end of his book and gave it to someone else to look at. This someone else is called a publisher or an editor. It's buy a copy anyway, because look at this character sitting here. Could he possibly ever not write something that wasn't hilarious? Even if it's gruesome, it has to be interesting. And it's the result of months of work, blood, sweat and tears. And who knows, one day you may be having a book launch, and then you'll really know how Tony's feeling today. So, congratulations, Tony. Well done, mate. Good on you.
Thank you very much.